On this episode, we're going to build a simple modern table with a little California. State, country, logo, shape, or whatever you wanted to cut into it. But while I was making this table, it got me wondering, is the shape of California recognizable worldwide? I'd say it's definitely recognizable within the US to anybody older than about 12, but worldwide, I don't know, it might not be as iconic as it seems to me. So then I thought, in full honesty, what country shapes worldwide would I recognize out of context? Or in the lower left-hand corner of a table, as it were. The US, obviously, since I live here. Italy, because it's a boot. Mexico, Chile, Australia, because it's also a continent. Japan, China, Brazil, maybe Germany. And honestly, off the top of my head, that's all that I could come up with. 9 out of 195. Not great, but in my defense, pretty much every country does kind of just look like a blob. Geography aside, while the glue on my tabletop was drying, I whipped up this quick little abstract of California using 3 different sized circles. And once I was happy with the look of it, I imported it into easel and then headed over to my X-Carve to cut it out. And I've gone over the X-Carve by Inventables and their easel software in one of my other videos in a lot more detail, so I'll throw a link to that video as well as to the Inventables website in the description below so you can learn more about it there. Next, I set my blade to roughly 15 degrees, and this is a non-crucial angle, so just going off the table saw scale was accurate enough. And then made a cut along all 4 edges to bring the tabletop to its final size and shape. Alright, here comes the fun / scary part, pouring the epoxy. So since I'm still relatively new to this, I made myself a little test piece on the X-Carve as well. Just a little bit of the coastline. This was going to be the first time that I ever used pigment in my epoxy, and I wanted to get a sort of sunset gradient effect. So you can see on the test piece, what I'm doing here is pouring 2 different colors on the ends, and then mixing them, pouring that concoction in the middle, and doing this sort of wipe to hopefully feather it all together. And I was pretty pleased with how it came out, so I decided to proceed with the real top. The only real difference is that with the real top, I'm going to use 3 colors instead of just 2. Blue on one end, a pinkish purple in the middle, and orange on the other end. Then in this section, a blue-pink mix, and in this section, a pink-orange mix. For the epoxy, I'm using TotalBoat High Performance, which is a 2-to-1 ratio. So you can see here I'm being really careful to get just the right amount in each of my little cups. And this is easier for larger pours because you can just use their cups with measurements on the side to make sure that you have the right mix. But that wasn't really an option for me because I just wanted really small portions. Alright, enough stalling. Let's pour. Okay, so with my top set aside, I could get to work on my legs. Here I'm going to go with the simple trapezoid, pretty much identical to what you'd see on a Nelson bench. So I started by ripping a 1-inch thick piece to just a bit over 4 inches wide. And then I used my crosscut sled to cut out 4 sections that are going to be oversized at this point. After that, I grabbed my vertical panel cutting jig. This is what I use anytime that I need to make bevel cuts that are more than 45 degrees. And let's cut away to some drawings to explain what I'm doing here. So I want to make a shape where these pieces flare out at 10 degrees. So if you look at this piece, for example, you can see that on one end I need to tilt my blade to 40 degrees, and on the other end I need to tilt it to 50 degrees, which isn't possible. So instead, what we'll do is lock the blade in at 40 degrees and make this cut normally, and then use the vertical panel jig to cut the piece vertically, giving us the 50-degree bevel that we need. Alright, let's cut them. So fitting the last piece is always the trickiest. What I like to do is put my pieces together, take a measurement, and then just sneak up on the cut to get it to fit. After the piece was dry enough, I set my fence to 2 inches and turned this one piece into my 2 legs. Now this piece is pretty heavy, so I decided to reinforce the leg joints with a couple of splines on each corner. So what I'm doing here is clamping my piece to the vertical panel jig again, and then cutting a pair of slots at each joint. After I'd finished that, I could take my actual splines and glue them in. And while I'm doing that, let's take a minute to thank this video's sponsor, Filterbuy. Filterbuy is a direct-to-consumer replacement filter brand. They stock over 600 air and furnace filter sizes, and will even custom produce filters for you if needed. They're located and produced here in the US, and all their orders ship for free and within 24 hours. And if you opt to subscribe, you save 5% off every order. And personally, I think that this is definitely the way to go. I happen to live in Southern California, as you can tell by my table, where we run our AC pretty consistently for about 4 months of the year, and really only use our heaters sporadically as needed during the winter. So basically our filters get a relatively light workload compared to other parts of the country. And I think that actually makes it harder to remember to change them. So now I've got it set up where every 3 months a new set of filters arrives, and when they do, I know it's time to change them. And then I can go back to forgetting about it for another 3 months. Kind of like quarterly taxes or flossing. Not really. Hygiene's important. Alright, so check out the link below and save yourself some time and some money. Thanks, Filterbuy. Okay, so after my legs were dry and sanded, I decided to stain them black with some leather dye. And I know I'm going to get some comments asking why I would stain such beautiful wood, so here's my philosophy. The goal of any individual piece is not to be the most beautiful that it can be, but rather to serve towards making the best overall end result. The top is the star of the show, and everything else should serve that. To attach my top, I'm going to use the same figure 8 desktop fasteners that you guys have seen me use before. but instead of mortising them into the leg like I would normally do, I'm going to mortise them into the underside of Beef, David Roger, Alaskan Rock Vodka, Casey Williams, Corey Bozarth, Shane Adams, and the rest of my Patreon members for helping me to live my California dream. Or I guess technically it'd be more the American dream. Let's just say dream. But in any case, if you like the show and want to find out more about how you can support it too, check out the Patreon link in the description and see if it's right for you. And as always, no pressure. All right. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.